2NURFM.com, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
And joining us for our regular look at the crazy world of politics, Associate Professor in Politics, Dr. Jim Joes from the University of Newcastle. Good morning, Jim. It's
morning, Meryl.
The countdown now, the last 2 weeks. How much trouble can they stir up in
Heaps.
the last fortnight of Parliament? How do you think they've gone, Jim? There's a broad assessment over the last 12 months. Perhaps we could deal with the opposition first. What's your broad brush assessment of their performance? Well, broadly
speaking, they're in a bit of a very low trough at the moment. Over the past 10, 11 months, things were looking pretty reasonable for them, and I guess you could call it the Abbott factor. They had a Prime Minister who made it easy in many respects for the opposition leader to shine, and he tended to take a sort of very, shall we say, backward position. He didn't push too hard. He allowed the government to sort of make mistakes, and maybe that was not necessarily the best strategy. He did announce that this year would be the year of new ideas, but there haven't been very many bold policies or big vision statements coming through
from Labor.
Yeah,
and you can't say it's the year of ideas and not sort of come up with very many, can you?
Well, there haven't been many that we haven't heard before. So it hasn't, in that respect, looking back, it hasn't been a good year, and certainly looking from where Bill Shorten is at present with a very low approval rating. Although you need to sort of understand, I think, that these approval ratings are fixed around questions which sort of give you an answer that is not really reflective of a wider mood of the population. But
is it what I call parachute politics, Jim? In that, in terms of new ideas, they only do things within the safety of that electability zone. You know, they don't sort of often float new ideas that might truly be out there because they, at the end of the day, they want to be re-elected. Power is all-consuming. So they sort of say it's going to be new ideas. They float around the edges a bit, but really it's not.
Oppositions try and play it safe. They tend to have what they call a low-profile or low-policy target, so that they can't be held too much to account when they're elected, so that they pursue fairly safe policies. What that has meant, though, is that once I don't know if you could call it the liability, but certainly once they lost Tony Abbott as a sort of secret weapon, they then are now up against a Prime Minister who has an entirely different demeanour, a different approach, and he's working differently with his colleagues in the coalition. It's not a sort of blustery stamp the foot and I'm the boss type approach. It's a more yes, I'm in charge, but you need to we work in a more team-like approach.
Thoroughly consultative, I think that's what he called it.
Yes, how effective that will be in the long run remains to be seen, and how much of a team it really is in terms of the sort of general understandings of teamwork. However, at the moment, one can look at the way the government has been running and the way in which Malcolm Turnbull has operated. One, he's had a very successful overseas trip. He's conducted himself and conveyed himself in a very statesmanlike manner. He's established a rapport with probably Australia, at present, Australia's most important ally, the United States. He's developed a very strong rapport from all accounts with President Obama. Exactly how one measures that is probably debatable, but certainly for positive press, Malcolm Turnbull's come out with it fairly well. A number of his public statements following the terrorist attacks in Paris and at the G20, at the APEC summit, at the there was another meeting that he was at as well, I think, and then also coming up to the climate meeting. Malcolm Turnbull's public comments have been very balanced, very measured, and basically trying to sort of, shall we say, hose down some of the ways in which the former Abbott government operated and project a slightly different image. How long you can keep that up as some of the issues start to bubble up, the climate meeting is going to be one which will be a test. So the way in which Australia's delegates perform might tell us something about the shifts that might be going on within the coalition. At present, the coalition is still based on direct action in terms of its attitude to the environment and climate change. Whether Malcolm Turnbull will be able to stamp his mark in a much more activist direction remains to be seen. He's also got to deal with the current legislation that's before the Parliament, the one around dual citizenship. At present, he appears to have the numbers. The Labor Party is supportive. In fact, the Labor Party can do very little but support it, because if it stands up and takes a stand, however principled or justified or not, as the case may be, no matter what it says in relation to that particular issue, it's always going to come out and be seen in a negative light. The government basically has the front running on security issues and defence issues, and the Labor Party is sort of caught there. It either has to take a hiding, and it's already in a position where that's happening as far as Bill Shorten's concerned, or it has to go along with the government. A couple of Labor people have sort of put their hands up and said, well, we're not very happy and we might cross the floor or at least not support the legislation. If that happens, then we might see a bit of fireworks in Canberra, and maybe the next 2 weeks will not be perhaps as tame in the sense of running down towards the end of the year, but they may well be a little bit more politicking and exciting in the sense that people might actually start debating some of the issues, and there might be a little bit of difference of opinion.
I think a lot of people are still saying, will the real Malcolm Turnbull still stand up? Jim,
well,
thank
next
you.
year we'll probably see a bit more of the real Malcolm Turnbull, I think, Meryl. He'll have to assert himself far more strongly, because that's when he'll be taking the coalition to the polls.
Yes, indeed. Professor Jim Joes, Dr. Jim Joes, Associate Professor in Politics from the University of Newcastle. Thanks for your time, Jim, and we'll catch up next week.
My pleasure, Meryl.
Yes, it is interesting times, and will they play up in the last fortnight? It remains to be seen. 2NURFM.